It was the kind of story people whispered about in small towns. A house standing alone on the edge of a snowy village, covered in silence and suspicion. The villagers never went near it. Some said it was cursed. Some said it was occupied by something that didn't belong to this world. And some just refused to talk about it at all. My name is Robin. I was transferred last winter to a remote school near the Colorado mountains. The village was small, isolated, and the nights were longer than the days. When I arrived, I needed a place to stay. That's when I first heard about that house. The villagers warned me, don't rent it. Nobody stays there for long. They said strange things happened inside its walls. But I was new. I didn't believe in such tales. And honestly, it was too cheap for a house that size. So I took it. The first few days were normal. I went to school in the morning, taught my classes, and came home to the quiet creak of wooden floors. Snow fell endlessly outside, covering the roof and windows like a white coffin. At night, silence wrapped the house. Nothing unusual. No shadows moving. No voices in the dark. Just silence. I thought to myself, maybe the villagers were just superstitious. Maybe it's all in their heads. But then, small things began to happen. At first, I ignored them. A door that I swore I had locked stood slightly open in the morning. A spoon fell from the kitchen counter when no one was around. Little things, things you could explain away. But then came the night when I was woken up by a soft sound. Knock, knock, knock. It was coming from my bedroom door. My heart froze. I lay still in bed, holding my breath, staring at the door in the darkness. No one was supposed to be here. Yet the knocking continued. Knock, knock, slow, steady, as if whoever or whatever stood outside knew I was awake. I didn't open it. I couldn't. And after a while, the knocking stopped. The silence returned, heavier than before. The next morning, I told myself it was just a dream, just my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That was the first night, the first sign that I wasn't alone in that house. The days after that knocking passed quietly. I convinced myself again that it was nothing, just the old wood of the house adjusting in the cold. After all, the snow pressed against the walls like a heavy blanket. Old houses make sounds. That's what I kept telling myself. But things started to shift. One evening when I returned from school, I found the salt jar spilled across the kitchen counter. The white grains scattered like frost. At first, I thought maybe I had left it open in a hurry. But then, when I cooked, the food tasted unbearably salty. So much that I had to throw it away. Another night, I woke up freezing. My blanket was gone. I looked around, and there it was, dragged halfway across the floor, as if someone had pulled it right off me while I slept. The strangest part, I didn't hear a thing. No footsteps, no creaks, nothing. Just the silent theft of warmth in the middle of the night. I wanted to tell myself again, it's just me. I must have kicked it off in my sleep. But something in me whispered, no, it wasn't me. One morning, while I was leaving for school, I noticed the front door slightly open. I knew I had locked it. I always locked it. And yet, there it was. open just enough for cold air to seep in. The footprints in the snow outside, they were only mine, no one else's. That night, I sat in my living room with the fire lit, the flames cracked softly, the only sound in the still house. I tried to read a book to distract myself, but every few minutes I felt it, that presence, the sensation that someone was standing just behind me, silent, watching. I never turned around. I don't know why. Maybe because some part of me was afraid of what I might see. The activity never harmed me. It never shouted, never attacked, never showed its face. It was playful, almost, annoying me with little things, salt, doors, blankets, as if reminding me I'm here. By the end of the second week, I had stopped denying it. There was something in that house, something unseen, something that belonged there as much as I did now. And strangely, I wasn't afraid anymore. I remember telling myself, if it wanted to hurt me, it would have done so already. But it didn't. Instead, it lived with me, like an invisible roommate. One night, as I blew out the lantern and crawled into bed, I whispered into the darkness, "I know you're here." The house groaned softly, as if in answer, and then silence again. That's when I realized I was no longer just living in that house. I was living with it. Snowstorms grew heavier that week. The village roads were buried, and silence stretched endlessly outside. No cars, no footsteps, just the endless hiss of falling snow. Inside, the house felt warmer than ever yet, somehow more alive. One evening, I was in the kitchen, boiling water for tea. Suddenly, clang, a metal pot fell hard onto the wooden floor. I froze. The pot had been placed securely on the shelf above me. It hadn't just slipped, it had been pushed. I looked up at the shelf, empty, no hands, no movement, nothing but the quiet hum of the boiling kettle. Another night, I heard the same knocking again. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, it wasn't at my bedroom door. It came from the wall, right beside my bed, as if someone was knocking from the other side. From inside the wall, my breath caught in my throat. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. No knocking now. Just the faint, hollow sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. In the morning, I checked. There was nothing on the other side of that wall, just snow and emptiness. One evening, after returning from school, I entered the house and immediately noticed something odd. My chair in the living room wasn't where I had left it. It had been turned slightly, as if someone had been sitting there, facing the fireplace. I stood there, staring at it. The fire was cold, the room empty, but the chair looked used. I told myself again, it's harmless, just harmless tricks. But deep inside, I felt it, watching, always watching. One night, as I ate dinner alone at the wooden table, I felt the fork in my hand grow heavier. I looked down. The fork was bent, its prongs twisted slightly, as if some invisible pressure had squeezed it. I dropped it instantly. It clattered loudly, echoing through the hollow house. I didn't eat the rest of the meal. It became a pattern, the knocking, the shifting objects, the misplaced blanket. The house was alive, interacting with me. But instead of running away, I began adapting. I started talking aloud, even when alone. "All right, I know you're here. Stop knocking. I'm trying to sleep." Or sometimes, "You'll have to cook if you don't like my food." I don't know why, but the more I spoke, the less afraid I felt. It was as though we were communicating in a strange, silent language of knocks and movements. And then, one night, as the snowstorm howled outside and I sat near the fireplace, I heard it, a whisper, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. Just 2 words right behind me. "I'm here." I didn't turn around. I just sat there, staring into the fire, and whispered back, "I know." The snow had thickened outside. Nights felt longer, colder, heavier, and the house felt more alive with each passing day. One evening, I was correcting school papers at my desk. The lamp flickered once, then steadied. I didn't pay much attention. The power in villages often misbehaves during storms. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. The glass window beside me had a shadow. Not mine, not from the lamp. It was faint, human-shaped, as if someone was standing just outside in the snow. My heart stopped. Slowly, I turned toward the window. There was nothing, just the endless whiteness of snow piled against the glass. But for that brief second, I swear I had seen someone. The next night, it happened again. This time, not a shadow, a reflection. As I passed by the hallway mirror, I caught sight of movement, a figure standing just behind me. I spun around instantly. No one, just the empty hallway stretching into silence. I stood there for a long moment, staring into the mirror. The reflection was only me now, but my chest tightened, because in that frozen moment, I knew I wasn't imagining it. Another day, I came home from school, exhausted, snow clinging to my boots. The living room chair was turned again, but this time there were faint impressions on the cushion, as if someone had been sitting there. Recently, I placed my hand on the cushion. It was warm. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence was too loud, pressing on my ears. And then, tap, tap, tap. Light, gentle taps on the window near my bed. Snow was piled against the glass from the outside. No one could be standing there, yet the tapping continued. 3 soft knocks, then silence. I pulled the blanket tighter, heart pounding. Minutes passed, nothing else happened. But I couldn't shake the thought. Whatever it was, it wanted me to notice. It wanted me to know. I was never truly alone. By now, fear had changed. It wasn't the kind that made me want to run. It was the kind that made me stay awake, alert, waiting for the next sign. Sometimes, I caught myself whispering before bed, "Good night," not to myself, to whoever else was listening. And though the house never replied, I could feel it. It heard me. The silence of the house began to expand, change. It wasn't empty anymore. At night, the walls carried faint sounds, not voices, not footsteps, but something in between. Sometimes it was the rattle of dishes in the kitchen. Sometimes it was the sound of pages turning, though no book lay open. And sometimes just a soft hum, low, unrecognizable, almost like someone breathing just beyond the walls. One evening, I was sitting near the fireplace, grading homework. A glass that I had placed on the table began to slide, slowly, smoothly, across the wood. It didn't fall, it just moved, as if pushed gently by unseen hands. I sat frozen, watching. The glass stopped at the edge, perfectly balanced, and then silence again. Another night, I was preparing dinner. I set a plate on the table, turned to fetch a spoon. When I looked back, the plate was no longer where I left it. It was placed neatly at the opposite end of the table, as if someone had shifted their seat. I whispered out loud, without thinking, "Do you want to eat with me?" The house creaked softly, almost like an answer. The strangest part was, these things never frightened me now. Not anymore. Instead, they felt like habits of another presence, like living with a quiet roommate who had their own way of reminding me, this is my house too. But one night, the most unnerving thing happened. I was in my room, writing in my notebook. The lantern flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness filled the room, heavy and absolute. I fumbled for matches, my hands shaking slightly. And in that short silence, I heard it. A voice, soft, clear, right beside me. Just one word. Stay. The match struck with trembling fingers, light flooding the room again. But there was no one there, only me, only the stillness. I should have been terrified, but instead, I felt something strange, a pull, as if the house wasn't just haunting me anymore. It was asking me, begging me, not to leave. And I realized then, I didn't want to. By the third month, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied, not in a threatening way, not like a monster hiding in shadows, but like someone else lived here, someone invisible. I noticed small things changing. When I left books scattered on the desk, I'd return to find them stacked neatly. When I forgot to put out the candle before sleeping, I'd wake to see it extinguished. When I misplaced a pen, I'd find it placed right beside my notebook. These weren't accidents, they were routines. Someone or something was living with me. The strangest moment happened on a Sunday morning. I was drinking tea near the window, watching the snow fall outside. Steam curled from the cup, fogging the glass. And for a second, in that fog, I saw words, 2 letters, "Hi," written as if traced by a finger on the inside of the glass. I dropped the cup. Tea spilled across the floor, staining the rug. My heart raced, but not from terror, from the shocking realization that it was trying to talk. That night, before bed, I whispered into the dark, "Hello." No reply came, but the blanket stayed tucked around me till morning. Days passed. I found myself adjusting more and more. I would set 2 plates on the table while eating. One for me, one left empty. I don't know why I did it. Maybe to show I accepted it, that I wasn't alone anymore. Sometimes, after a long day at school, I'd sit in the living room, look at the turned chair by the fireplace, and just talk about my day, about my students, about nothing in particular. The chair never moved while I spoke, but I always felt it listening, and strangely, I didn't feel lonely. One night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For just a heartbeat, I saw myself standing there, but with someone else behind me, a blurred figure, too quick to recognize. By the time I blinked, I was alone again. I should have been afraid, but instead, I smiled, because I knew whatever lived here, it didn't want to hurt me, it just wanted me to stay. And maybe I wanted the same. By now, I had stopped questioning it. The knocking, the whispers, the little changes around the house. They were no longer strange to me, they were normal. Every morning, I greeted the house like it was alive, and in small ways, it always answered. A chair slightly turned, a book placed back on the shelf, a candle blown out before I noticed. People in the village still warned me, "Robin, that house isn't safe. You'll regret staying there." But I only smiled because they didn't understand. The house wasn't my enemy. It was my companion. One night, as I lay in bed, snow pressing hard against the windows, I whispered softly, "I'm not leaving." And from somewhere deep in the silence, the wood creaked gently, like a sigh of relief. I don't know what lives here. I don't know if it's a spirit or just the soul of the house itself. But I do know this: it has never harmed me. It has never frightened me away. It only reminds me, in its own way, that I am not alone. And the truth is, I don't want to be. This is not the kind of horror tale filled with blood or monsters. It is something quieter, something far more real. Robin, a school teacher, transferred to a small, snowy village near Colorado, rented a house that everyone else feared. The villagers warned him it was cursed, haunted by a presence no one dared to live with. But Robin moved in anyway. At first, the house was silent. Then came the little things. A knock at the door in the middle of the night. A blanket pulled away as he slept. Salt added to his food. A chair turned toward the fireplace. It was never violent, never harmful, just present. Over time, Robin stopped fearing it. He adapted. He began cooking for two, leaving a plate for the unseen guest. And in the mornings, the plate was gone, washed, cleaned, put back in its place. The house was alive, and Robin was no longer alone. He says when he visits his family, he can't stop thinking about it. How is the house now? How is the one who lives there when I am gone? The story is unsettling, not because it's terrifying, but because it feels real. A haunting without violence, a presence without cruelty, and in the end, Robin isn't haunted. He is accompanied.